Hi, my name is Ricky Sykes, your guide on a tour of the cultural tales of East Tennessee. This week, we will explore a man who creates folk art some say has the power to heal. A preacher with an alternative to evolution. This and more on Extracted.
Ever have a toothache that won't go away? Our first story features a man who discovered he had a hidden talent when he cured his niece's pesky ailment with folk art.
I think people thought that my uncle was a really special guy because he had this strange, almost supernatural ability to help people who were sick or in some type of pain.
Growing up in the backwoods of Tennessee, a formal education was never an option for the lifelong miner.
I guess it was my sister, Abby. She's a little bit younger than me. She had toothache, really bad toothache one night. And she just wouldn't stop crying. I remember all night she was just crying up in her room. And we were sharing the same room, so she was keeping me up. I was getting angry. And Uncle Lester was really, I guess he felt her pain in a strange kind of way. Like how I guess family members do, but Lester would do this for people outside of just our family. But he wanted to find a way that he could help her toothache without Dad having to pull the tooth out or anything like that, since none of the medicines were working. So he went off to the barn and he pieced together these skeleton-looking figures, these dolls, out of wood. And then what he would do, this is like he'd blow into his harmonica, and he would kind of make it dance kind of like a puppet.
Miraculously, the toothache was cured. Lester had discovered he could heal people with lumberjacks, though even Tommy admits to being initially skeptical.
It was kind of like magic or something. I didn't believe it at first. Pa didn't believe it. He was glad she quit crying. Nobody really in our little town believed it at first. But over time, it just got a little bit more convincing, and it made everybody in the area sort of believe that maybe sometimes like these sort of supernatural things are possible.
But was Lester Dowdy healing people?
Well, some people wrote a couple letters, and we kept them here in the photo album. Just different people. One from this gentleman named Alex says, I didn't believe the lumberjacks would work, but my wife's back pain is gone. Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. This is a person he met once, saw once. He'd take the lumberjack, and he'd have this board across the top of it, or maybe like a piece of string nailed to the board, so he would have it dance like this, but we hang them up now. Nobody uses them anymore because nobody could use them like Lester did. And he'd basically take it, and he'd take his harmonica, and he's much better at the harmonica than I am. Basically, he would just So, obviously, you can see why people were a little bit skeptical.
Lester Dowdy was most proud of curing a snake bite.
A damn water moccasin bit me. My leg was swollen and bleeding, and I was running a fever. My dad called Mr. Dowdy, and he came right over. And he went out and he caught that same water moccasin. I swear to it. And by the time he got back with it, though, I'd passed out.
Dowdy killed the snake and wrapped it around the lumberjack's leg. He danced it around until the snake fell off.
But then I remember hearing harmonica music. It sounded like angels singing.
Lester Dowdy touched many lives with his lumberjacks, though there was a limit to where he could heal. He died in 2003 of natural causes, and most of his lumberjacks were donated to the Spelman Collection. In my hands, I have a land deed signed by one Arthur Middleton, dated 1865. Middleton fought for the North during the Civil War and bought land upon his return home, settling for a life of farming. He wasn't an artist by trade, but two similar paintings, both bearing his name, are garnering attention in the art community. Doesn't sound strange yet? Well, what if I told you that the second piece was dated in 1982, over a half a century after his reported death? David Alcorn is a professor at the University of Tennessee's Art History program. When he isn't spending time educating the artists of tomorrow, Alcorn is a curator at the Ewing Gallery.
The Arthur Middleton exhibit is an interesting addition to our collection. At one time, there was only one known painting attributed to him. That's the Lincoln portrait you see behind me. He donated it to a local gallery called the Crocs House as a tribute to President Lincoln, whom he fought under during the war. Now, his wife, Brooke Middleton, told him that he had talent, but he didn't see that, so he claimed he'd never paint again. The story should end there, but a painting of President Reagan was donated anonymously in 1991 to the university that matched Middleton's technique and bore a similar signature. Done a lot of restoration work. Apparently, while Lincoln was stored in the Croc, they kept great care of him, so that by the time we got our hands on the painting, our restoration techniques were able to clean it up so that it looks remarkably similar to the Reagan painting, almost as if they were painted mere days apart.
Can two portraits painted over a century apart be from the same artist? Jonathan Brabson Thomason, an expert in handwriting analysis, believes so.
I do the important work of forensic document examination. In 1998, the University of Tennessee called me and asked me to look at these two portraits. I had known David from a previous project that we had worked on together, and he called me and said, "JBT, I have got the weirdest situation on my hands. You got to come down here and tell me I'm not crazy." So I went down there, and within 5 minutes, I was as obsessed as he was with trying to debunk these things. The first thing I noticed is that they were written with a crow quill, which you don't really see that much anymore, so I took note of that right away. Also, the rounded A's and the similar spacing and pressure that you see here, that's a spot-on match. In my professional opinion, it's highly unlikely that these three signatures were done by different people.
But others are more skeptical, seeing the paintings as a publicity stunt. Artist Frankie Smith.
It doesn't take an art degree to tell that the Reagan painting was a stunt or a forgery. Logic tells us that there's no way these paintings were done by the same person. I mean, the artist would be 120 years old when the second painting was produced. It's much more likely that the painting was forged, although a well-done forgery. Whoever is responsible picked an artist that no one cares about and who only had one piece in a museum. Unfortunately, there isn't an established body of work, so it's impossible to disprove. Well, except through logic.
The Arthur Middleton exhibit can be seen at the University of Tennessee's Art and Architectural Building. You can find it in the Ewing Gallery as a part of their BV series. Since the publication of Darwin's Origin of the Species, the debate on how life came to be on Earth has been highly contested. In recent years, battle lines have been drawn in the classroom between evolution and intelligent design. Now, a preacher from Tennessee is throwing his hat into the ring. Meet Reverend James Randolph Denton II of Dayton, Tennessee.
Well, this is it. Tonight I'm here to spread the gospel of creative zoology to the physical anthropologists, to let them know about, the work of the association and its experience, the anthropomorphic. Hi, welcome to the Association for Creative Zoology. Here's some information on the background and history of the association and our work to advance creation science.
What exactly is creative zoology?
The Association for Creative Zoology was founded in the early 20th century to be closer to God. Creative zoology is a branch of creation science that's based in the concept of zoomorphic juncture. It explains species diversity. Evolutionists use natural selection. Creative zoologists claim that the dragon and the unicorn, as described in the Bible, are examples of how God uses collage or create zoomorphic juncture to create new creatures. Well, this is a fish cat. You've heard of the catfish. Well, here we have the inverted fish cat, Micropterus trichopolaris. Micropterus is in the bass family. Tricho is Latin for hair, polaris for ball, so it's the bass with hair ball. All of them illustrate the principles of zoomorphic juncture, how God combines different creatures like the dragon or the unicorn or the duck-billed platypus to create new creatures. So the bull raccoon is another example of that.
So basically, instead of evolution, you believe?
Yes, species diversity is not the result of natural selection. See, the world is not old enough for natural selection to play out. Young Earth creationists believe that the world is only a little over 6,000 years old.
What is the zoomorphic juncture?
To understand it as a form of collage, how God creates new creatures by using existing ones. He can make creatures whole cloth, but he can also take his creation like any artist and combine it and recombine it in different ways.
How have scientists received his message?
They might think of it as flawed science from the earlier part of the century, but generally they have enough confidence in the scientific method to question the presentations, and so they see them as more fiction than fact. There's a number of ways of substantiating creative zoology. Well, we do have fossil evidence of the bull raccoon, and also we have records from the ancient world. Of course, there's the Bible itself and its various references to dragons and unicorns, but there's also the depictions of creatures in the ancient world. Consider the Hanging Gardens of Babylon with its dragons, or the Sphinx of Egypt. And there are also depictions of similar creatures that combine animal and animal, or animal and human, as depicted among the ancient Greeks, in the Indus Valley in India and so forth. So creative zoologists believe that the early world had many examples of these sort of creatures, and their publications are an effort to document and represent what those creatures looked like. Dragons and griffins and centaurs, for example. Well, I think that you characterize them as mythical is in fact a misrepresentation. The Bible refers to these creatures, so they existed.
How is the zoomorphic juncture different than evolution?
We're just working from a different data set than evolutionists. Religious-based science, and the association work is an effort to promote that. Creationists respond to evolutionists by offering a counter-argument, and they feel they have a place at the table in terms of discourse about our origins, who we are and where we came from. Yeah, well, of course the duck-billed platypus is a good example of a creature that combines a beaver and a duck. It explains that it's egg-laying, even though it has many of the characteristics and qualities we associate with mammals in terms of its blood temperature and so forth. There are other examples that we see in the ancient record as well. Dinosaurs, as described by evolutionists, fit many of the principles of zoomorphic juncture as well, in terms of the combination of of anatomical forms that, that explain their formation.
His father, Reverend James Randolph Denton I, introduced creative zoology. Today, Reverend Denton II spreads his father's message throughout East Tennessee.
Well, Reverend Denton was very concerned about public education, and that's why he established the association and initiated his public information campaigns in the early 20th century. And he was alarmed that secular humanism was taking over our public schools. Scientists admit that the fossil record is an ongoing process of discovery, that paleontologists are still doing that work. And the association does have examples of fossils supporting the theory of zoomorphic juncture. So I think sometimes scientists are selective in what they want to recognize as legitimate data. So clearly more work needs to be done, and as the scientific method moves forward, creative zoologists expect that the biblical story of creation will be confirmed.
What happened to all the creatures?
Well, unfortunately, most of them perished. The ones that have survived are mostly the ones related to the fish family, those that can swim, and some of those that can fly. But most terrestrial creatures perished in the Great Global Flood, especially those in the New World that weren't able to make their way onto Noah's Ark. The analysis of DNA suggests that all creatures are essentially combinations of some of the same elements. So the creative zoologists, I think, are hopeful that continued development into genetic science will help to support their theories regarding species diversity.
Should it be taught in schools?
Well, thankfully, a number of school boards and state education boards are recognizing the importance of providing a broad scientific curriculum that includes creation science. So in the 1920s, Reverend Denton developed teaching modules that are currently being updated by creation scientists. They're already being used in a number of religious private schools, and we hope that those materials will be adopted as part of course curriculum by local, county, and state boards of education to advance the understanding of science more broadly and creation science in particular. There's a great benefit to all humankind to have a deeper and more profound understanding of the mystery and wonder of God's creation. Well, thanks for stopping by. I hope I've helped you learn more about creative zoology.
Tune in next week for a Kentucky woman who crafts dolls to overcome her family's legacy of racism and intolerance. Until then, this is Extracted.